Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer. Welcome to the virtual CISO moment. Tyler Bartley joins us today. He is cybersecurity engineer at Critical Start. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here, Greg. Great to meet you in person finally, too.
Well, almost in person.
Almost.
Almost in person. Man, same here. Great to meet you as well. And would love to hear about, as I start out every one of these 185 so far episodes, tell me about your path. Why did you get involved in this cyber stuff? And then how it led you to being a, if I remember correctly, cybersecurity engineer, where you're at today.
Yeah, so I feel like I had a pretty typical path for anybody interested in IT. Whenever I was a kid, I was really into computers. I have my cousin to thank for that, and I would do a lot of tinkering with him, a lot of troubleshooting, like on if his computer was having any issues, he'd walk me through that, and that's kind of what that was the gateway, really, as to what got me really interested.
The gateway drug.
The gateway drug, yeah. As to what got me interested in getting started in IT. So I built a lot of my education around that. So after I graduated from high school, somehow I I went to a trade school and studied computer support there.
No,
Got my
wait. I got to
Yeah.
stop and ask. You said that
Uh-oh.
you graduated somehow from high school.
Somehow.
Coming from my perspective of being expelled from three different high schools when I was in high school, I want to hear if there's a story behind that because I somehow made it to high school myself.
You know what? Not much of a story. I just I wasn't a very good student, is one way of putting it. I was able to do my tests and everything fine, but I just didn't do homework. I think I got out of school with like a 2.5 or something. It
Oh,
was it
see,
was just barely.
see,
Nothing crazy though.
I was okay with grades and all that, but my
Yeah.
attendance was like a zero point
Oh,
0.2 or something like that. I tended to. I made school optional.
there you go.
I made schooling remote before remote was even a possibility. So anyway, go on.
Sorry. So, after trade school, I got my first job working for the Department of Defense as a help desk tech over on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Were just pretty near to me, and from there, I really just started building my skills. I got my A plus, my Network plus, the Security plus, those that CompTIA trifecta that everyone seems to like to call it now. And I got those three, and then from there, I just kind of kept moving along jobs on a contract basis until I finally landed myself into a SOC analyst role with a local bank. And from there, I mean, my career kind of just skyrocketed. I went from an analyst to an engineer between companies within like 2 or 3 years or something like that. Just because I guess I'm kind of okay at my job, quote unquote, right? But from there, I kind of had after a couple bad experiences in the workplace, I kind of had a bit of an epiphany. And I was more along the lines of, do I even enjoy this industry anymore? I dedicated so much time to it, years at that point, ever since my whole adult life, really. And I had my bachelor's degree, but I also was just wrapping up my MBA, my master's business administration. And I'm like, well, do I really like the technical side of IT all that much anymore? And so I started exploring options after leaving my company that I was working for in February of last year. And I decided to try and pivot into accounting, as a couple people might already know. I tried pivoting into accounting there for a little bit, and after seeing what that job market was like compared to the mess that is still a little bit of IT right now, I realized that they're having a lot of the same problems that we
Mhm.
are. And I'm just like, well, maybe it isn't all that bad. And so I pivoted back. I finally got a job at my company that I work for now, Critical Start. They're a managed services provider. And I feel like I kind of just felt a lot more at home, like on more project based like work and more customer facing from a cybersecurity standpoint. And so I've been loving it ever since, and it kind of like reignited my like desire to stay within the industry a lot more.
Yeah, I remember when you were going through that, and I remember thinking, and I might have said something along these lines that um, that's a good thing to do to step away for a little while. I was kind of hoping that maybe you would have an epiphany and come back around, but sometimes what ends up happening with folks is that they realize they're in the wrong industry and they try to force it.
Yeah.
For me, I fell into IT. I was a mechanical engineering major for my undergrad, and the for various geopolitical reasons, this is around the end of the Cold War. Yes, I'm that old. Uh, the engineering market, the aerospace and mechanical was saturated, and so instead of trying to force my way somewhere which didn't seem to make sense, I kind of went with the flow with IT, and then eventually with security as well, because it kind of flowed from there. So I think that's a great pivot and a great lesson to folks that are listening or watching, that it's okay to take a sabbatical and re-examine where you're at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I learned a lot, just even from just stepping away, about like, even just the accounting job market. Being able to get that experience meant a lot. So I'm not regretful that I tried to do that, but I am glad I came back to security at the end of the day.
Now, this gives me an opportunity to tell a quick story since you mentioned accounting,
Oh boy.
and you were talking about going for your master's and all that as well. When I was going for my master's in information systems project management, this was in the business school, and my undergrad, like I said, was engineering. So I had to take some prerequisite undergrad business courses just to because it's a business school. So I had to take like accounting 101 or something like that, or 1001. I guess they use 4 digits now. Um, and if I get the nomenclature correctly, there's something called like a T diagram, right?
Yeah,
Does that sound familiar? Where
a
I
little
think you
bit.
have your debits and credits on one side or the other, and this and that.
Talking
It
about like
was
the balance sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
something like that, and I would always do my homework 30 seconds before the instructor was explaining it on the board. So, and
There you
my
go.
number wasn't matching hers, and of course, since I procrastinate and I did my homework in 30 seconds as she's starting it, because I did we didn't have to turn in the homework, but I wanted to learn it. My numbers didn't match hers. And we had this argument in class back and forth for a little bit until finally she realized, um, so I think she realized her error, and she said to me, "This is why accounting is not a good field to be in." My wife's an accountant, bless her heart. Um, she said the instructor said the numbers don't matter. It's the theory that I'm trying to teach you. I'm like, where'd you come from, Enron? It's like,
There you go.
I thought
Yeah.
the numbers is what mattered in accounting, you
No,
know?
no, it's just a theory, you see, Greg. We don't need to worry about those numbers at
We
all.
don't need no stinking numbers, just like risks. We don't need no stinking risks in information security, but there are some. And
Just a
so, from
few.
your perspective, what are some of the more significant information security risks in small and mid-sized businesses? You see how I pivoted there really
Yeah, it was
smoothly?
real good, real smooth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
So, so I know a lot of people like to talk about more technical risks. But if I've seen anything working where I do now, I actually have the opportunity to work with a lot of small businesses. Most of my clients have been smaller businesses. And to be honest, the biggest like pain that I see from them and why they're moving to managed services is the lack of like quality talent out there. And
Mhm.
that might sound a little contradictory to some things that I've like said before, where I don't necessarily agree with the ISC2 assessment that there's like 3 million jobs or whatever they're touting. But the fact is that like mid-level talent at that engineering or senior analyst level really does seem to be lacking, and that's where businesses are trying to fill those gaps. So what I think we need to be really focusing on is how many people can we get trained up. I've always been a big proponent of training and education, regardless of whether or not I think there's 3 million jobs or not. I've always been one to say that you need to go get your degree, you need to get your certifications, you need to get that education, because that's what employers are looking for right now.
Mhm.
And so I think without a lot of personnel available to fill any roles or any jobs or able to do the work that needs to be done, especially in small businesses where you're like in a 2 or 3 man shop most of the time. Um, I feel like that's really leaving a lot of empty holes and gaps for attackers to come in and eventually make their way in, because there's nobody really there to defend. And so I feel like that's where a lot of risk is right now, is small businesses not being prepared personnel wise.
Is it a lack of personnel or a lack of qualified personnel? Um,
Yeah, I feel like lack of qualified personnel would probably be the best way to put it, because there is a saturation issue
yeah.
in that like earlier tier like career. So there's a lot of saturation there, but qualified people are not a dime a dozen. I mean, I've worked at several multi-billion-dollar organizations, like one of my previous employers, MedPace, big biotechnical firm. We could not find qualified people like local to us or really remotely. Like they still have job postings up today where they're posting like a job and they get like 500 applicants, but maybe only like 10 of them fit the bill, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like the qualified candidate pool is actually pretty small. But even then, sometimes you don't get what you're looking for. And that's just how it is. Like there's not as many people out there who are as qualified as companies are looking for. That can be a different discussion too. Are companies asking for too much, or is there really just not a lot of talent?
No, I don't think that they're asking for too much. I've
Yeah.
said often, and this is of course just my observation as someone who's been in the industry for 30, I guess I'm on my 36th year, that there are a lot of people in cyber,
Mhm.
and I define cyber as the technical aspect of information security. Some people define it a little bit differently, I understand, but just so that we're all on the same page, it's very technical, and you have to have technical chops, and I don't mean this in a bad way to anybody listening or watching this podcast, but in my opinion, the vast majority of folks that I've encountered in cyber, I don't think they're that good. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's my perspective. I grew up on on this podcast. I can't remember who it was talking a few weeks ago. We came up. The guest came up with presented the idea of the investigative mindset, where when you're in cyber, you have to have that investigative mindset to really truly try to figure something out. But today we have all these different tools. You upload Kali and you've got like gazillion tools. And I think that there are too many people that are using the tools, but not necessarily understanding all of the mechanics behind it. Whereas back in the day, when I was doing that and it was all new, you had to understand what the tools were doing because that's the only way you could run the tools. I mean, do you kind of see something like that? Or is it just like one old person's to get off my lawn rant type thing in the cyberspace?
So I haven't seen too much of that. Now from a tooling perspective, I do find a lot of people relying on tools. At the same time, I think you and I might see it a little bit differently because um, while relying on tools too much, especially with generative AI and all that fun stuff like ChatGPT being accessible to everyone, it's really
Love it, love
lowering.
it. I love
Yeah,
it. I love it. I love it.
I love it as a tool, but like
Yes,
it lowers the bar a little bit,
it does. It can. Yeah.
and so I'm happy it exists, but you see a lot of this where people might not necessarily be as technically competent as you would like them to be. That being said, though, I think the reliance on tools now is just because that's kind of, especially on the defending side, because I've never been a red teamer. I haven't ever been on that end of the stick, but as a person who has been in the analyst side and now engineers for like my customers, it's um, the tools are just kind of like how you're expected to run alerts and how you're expected to like run integrations. Now everything is a GUI, and so for me, I see it as a little bit less indicative. I do wish there was like a lot more understanding as to what's going on the back end, and that's one of the things that I like to try to do is I always ask questions like, hey, what's actually going on here?
Yeah.
And so I think we do need more of that. But I think you and I might see it a little differently as to like how like maybe tools aren't as pervasive.
No, 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 no. I
Okay.
might have not explained it. I think we see it almost the same way. I think tools
Oh,
are great.
maybe.
I think
Okay.
tools are wonderful. I am very happy that we have those types of tools. I mean,
Oh, okay.
we use internally with our organization for scanning. We use OpenVAS through Greenbone,
Okay.
and it's got a GUI and it's a lot easier to manage as opposed to typing a command line like we used to do in the OpenVAS or the Nessus days when Nessus was free and all that, and it was just
Yeah.
command line. But when you're doing command line and you're adding the particular variables to that, the declarative variables to the statement, you kind of understand what it is that you're asking it to do.
I see.
When you have
Yeah.
the GUI, it's harder to understand what it is. In some
I,
ways, I think that the folks have a more difficult time of digging in and
yeah.
understanding exactly what the tool is doing.
Okay, then yeah, we think pretty much identically. Yeah, there's that layer of abstraction might be
Yeah,
the
and if
best
you
way
can
to
get
put it.
through that layer of abstraction, that's what I think separates the ones. Maybe I was being a little bit too rough in saying they don't really know what they're doing.
Right.
Maybe I should say that they don't understand necessarily what they're doing, and therefore it's like when you come back with, like, say, an answer from a scan that's kind of like a little bit out of the norm. If you understand exactly what the scan is doing, then you have that much of a head start to be able to figure out what the real risk is. And that makes you more marketable if you can convey that. That's what I'm
For
getting at.
sure. Yeah, then yeah, we completely agree actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And you
Yep.
can't, and getting back to SMBs, you can't have someone with even the level of being able to run tools with a lot of the smaller businesses, the ones that have 10, 20, 50 people, they
Yep.
have to rely on folks like you. So let me flip that a little bit. We're talking about MSPs, MSSPs. Are you an MSP or an MSSP, or do you really not care?
I
The,
mean, I hardly ever see a difference, but I think we're technically classified as an MSSP.
okay.
We're exclusively security services.
So, and that's the reason why I want to distinguish, just to
Yep.
make sure, like a traditional MSP wouldn't be doing SOC as a service, for example.
Right.
So you do SOC as a service, and you say that it's even difficult for you guys to find qualified folks, right?
Yeah, so at my company, I haven't had as many insights because I'm not really on the hiring side, but I
Hmm.
do hear where it's like finding somebody who um, isn't like lying on their resume can sometimes be a little tough. Or people who come in and they're like, we're at our recommendations, or I'm sorry, our requirements on our job postings are usually pretty clear. And so when we get somebody who doesn't even like come close to matching that when they apply, and normally it wouldn't be a problem, like one or two people who doesn't do that, okay, that's fine. We don't even want to bother looking at them. But then it ends up, it's like dozens, or sometimes like over 100 of things like that. And that's been where how it works like everywhere. You'll get people completely remotely unqualified to who apply your job, and it makes it really hard whenever you're on LinkedIn and you see like 400, 500, 600 people clicked apply to this job, and you're like, oh my god, do I even stand a chance? Like, and if you're qualified, you probably do, because like 90% of those people aren't close. Like, you
Yeah,
know
and unfortunately, though, it's yeah, this is a broader problem, and I don't think it's just within information security. I think it's
for
for any
sure.
field where you have people that are just doing, what do they call it, like spray and pray, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Just like kind of like throwing stuff out there, and the system is broken. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. I'm not going to go
Yeah.
down that rabbit hole here, except to say that I've always tried to emphasize to folks within the infosec and cyber communities that whatever you can do to differentiate yourself, and be able to explain that. So that'll give you a better chance against these, if you can get through the ATS, of course.
Yeah.
That'll give you a better chance of actually of being accepted. So I don't have any sort of magical formula for getting through the ATS, though. I think ATS is one of the things that's severely damaged our industry. I think that there are ways we can do it better, and I've talked about that. Um, but you're right. That is a significant risk. So let's just say, okay, I'm a small business, and uh, I don't even know what I don't know. And somebody told me that I need to contact you guys. Um, what would you tell them? Like where would you guys start with them?
Oh geez. Yeah, so like, you mean like the company I work for, you mean?
Or
So,
just general with
or in general?
MSSPs, because I don't
Yeah.
want you to talk specific about what you guys do and give away state secrets or anything like that.
Yeah. So I think a lot of MSPs really start with they start with kind of analyzing the environment or analyzing the technical knowledge of the person we're working with. So with small businesses, and I've seen up to like 500 employees. I know that's like kind of branching off of like that small medium size business size, but even up to 500 employees with like a two-person shop, that's two
Mhm.
people is not enough to cover that. And so where MSSPs kind of step in is we're like, well, we're here to assist you. Let's try to find the gaps so that we can help you fill them. And so there'll typically be an assessment with like an environment or on the technical capabilities, usually not super in depth. I feel like I've heard good things about how we do it, not no promotion or anything, but I feel like I've heard good things about my company and how we do it. But um, you'll typically start with that assessment and then work with them to see like if they're interested in getting assistance from you. Or I mean, sometimes they'll just walk away that now that they know, where some gaps are. But and that happens too. And I mean, more power to you. But are they going to be able to support themselves after that? So running that assessment and like trying to figure out where exactly the gaps are with like a third party is probably one of the more efficient ways to figure things out, because whenever you're really siloed into your own environment, you're more liable to really start missing stuff like, oh, this person logs into this computer and they screw up their login like twice a day. I mean, whatever, I'll pass on that. I'll go focus on things that I see are more important. And it just takes one time for that to be not, a given user trying to log into their computer twice a day. It might actually be the result of an attack. And so I think there's a lot of complacency too with internal environments.
Do you ever get the feeling that people would prefer not to know what you tell them? It's like, well, before
Yes.
you told me about those gaps, we were secure. We were in
Yeah.
ignorant bliss. And now
Yeah.
you've told me about all this stuff. Now I got to worry. I mean, I
Yep.
find that. You find that as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They're like, well, we didn't come here for you guys to tell us about these like 900 issues we have. And it's like, well, you kind of did. I mean, they're here. You can't ignore them now. Now that you know about them, you can't ignore them. So, yeah, that happens.
And for small and mid-sized businesses out there that are listening to this, is like, don't be scared about that, because
Right.
ultimately, you know, you want to find that before somebody else finds it who might have not so great intentions with that information. It's important. And there's no, I mean, of course there are going to be folks out there. It isn't limited to the MSSP space. There are virtual CISOs that'll do this too, where they'll find problems to sell you a solution. But the majority of folks out there don't do that. So if you feel that you're in a position that your provider of services is doing that, go look at other services, because most in the industry don't. They're very good at like trying to help you. All of us in security are very passionate about wanting to solve this problem, and that's what drives us. I mean, spot
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the more appealing aspects of the job is that problem solving.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just a job, it's a mission in some ways, but that mission can bring with it significant stress. I've been stressed out before. I just actually put out earlier last week on LinkedIn a post about one of my fur babies passed away, and she was instrumental in helping me back over 10 years ago deal with like extreme job stress from being in a toxic environment. And I handled it the wrong way. One of the wrong things I did is that I self-medicated too much with barley and hops that was combined with water and fermented, otherwise
There you
known
go.
as beer. Good stuff. But I encourage folks that to find healthy ways to deal with stress, because we're not going to get away from it in the industry. It's an almost never-ending fight to try to get to a place of not total security, but at least security where we've lowered the threat. What's one of the things you do, Tyler, to get away from the stresses of being in cyber?
I do a couple things. One of my main ones is video games. That's a good decompression method, but I actually have a prop for this next one. So
Oh, I love it. A
I
prop. Nobody
I
ever
love
brings
props.
props.
So I actually play a little bit of saxophone as well. So this is like a really good way. My neighbors probably don't like it so much, but
Wait a
um
minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
uh-oh.
Can you play us like a 3 or 5 second
I can't.
example?
My baby's
Okay.
asleep.
Okay.
That would
Well,
probably
I
get
would have
me.
taken the guitar and tried to accompany you, but with the delay and the fact that I suck at guitar, it wouldn't work. So.
It's
But
okay.
I
I'm
hear
not
you. I
John
mean, isn't
Coltrane either.
music is so great because it kind of like triggers the other side, not the analytical side of our brain, but the artsy side, the creative side. And so you feel like that you shut down pretty well from that, so long as you're not waking the baby when you play.
Like, I'm not waking the baby. Yeah, I think sometimes music is like really just one of those things that you can. you can shut off a lot of your brain, and you can just a lot of people call it noodling around whenever you just like play random notes and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And
yeah.
uh, I'm not very good at guitar myself, but with the saxophone, there's just so many like unique noises and stuff that you can get really experimental, and it kind of puts you into this like, I don't want to get too cheesy, but like Zen state of like, I'm just kind of grooving really to like my own sound. And I really do think it really helps relax for
Well,
sure.
I have no doubt that if I tried to pick up the saxophone, what would come out from it would be actually noise, and that it would actually induce
Yeah.
stress in people that are listening to it. So
What?
so I probably won't use it, won't do that. What future plans you got? So you're back on track. You love the cyber field. You found a home with an MSSP. Um, what's down the road for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I love whenever I get that question in interviews, like, "Well, hey, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And it's like, "Oh,
That's a standard question, right? I
well,
mean, we have to ask that.
yeah." So, that's a good one though, because I have my CISP, I have my CISM, my CISM, and it's like from a credentialing standpoint, I feel like I don't have anywhere crazy further to go, like for in terms of like getting a formal education. And so what I'm really doing now is, while I'm getting a lot more technical expertise, because a lot of my work experience prior was in vulnerability management. So now that I'm in a more services environment, I'm working a lot more with like Sentinel, Symologic, MDE, all the fun Microsoft stuff. And so I think what I'm really wanting to do is push my technical knowledge to help me be a better business leader later, because my end goal has always been on the business side of security.
Mhm.
I love technical work, don't get me wrong. It's just that I really really loved my MBA whenever I was going for that. And I've had a couple entrepreneurship ventures myself, nothing that's ever taken off or gone crazy, but um, I think that for me was, extremely exciting. And so where I really want to be in the future is like, I see myself as a technical or management level leader of a team, and that's where I want to be, eventually.
The One of the best things I ever did in my career, and this was probably about 15 years ago, is that, and this is based on a recommendation from a colleague and a mentor. I joined Toastmasters,
Okay.
and Toastmasters, you think about, well, that makes you a better orator. Um,
Yeah.
but the reason why I bring up Toastmasters, I bring this often up when somebody says that they want to jump more into leadership roles eventually, is that Toastmasters did two things that really helped me in that space. One was it helped me to listen better.
Yeah.
And second, it helped me to refine my ability to make a pitch very concisely. Because often, like when you're talking with like C-suite or the board, you don't have much time. So you need to be. So my recommendation to you is check it out. I have
Yeah.
no idea what the programs are like now, 10 years later.
Yeah.
My Toastmasters experience was like a 2 or 3 year stint, and I haven't gone back. Nothing because of it, because you grow. But anyway,
Yeah.
no, I think that's a great path. And Tyler, I really appreciate you coming on today. Lots of great conversation, great discussion. Learned a few things. You're the first person that's come on that brought a saxophone, so I'm glad to hear
Hey,
that.
breaking new ground. Yeah, and
Breaking.
it's go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was saying, yeah, break. I mean, I've had
Oh,
folks come on with like guitars and I think drums and but nobody has brought a wind instrument yet, or yeah, no, that's a wind. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
yeah, it is technically. It's all brass, but it's technically a
yeah.
wind instrument. Yeah. So yeah, no, and it's been great being here. And again, it was really nice to get to meet you virtually in person. There we go.
You too, and everybody, stay secure.